Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. DRF handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier and I will take a look at 3 of the 5 graded stakes races at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, beginning with the Harlan's Holiday Stakes on the main track. We'll also take a look at 2 turf races at Gulfstream, the Grade 3 Tropical Turf and the Grade 3 My Charmer. Nicole Russo's pedigree pick, it focuses on the New York Stallion Series at Aqueduct. Peter Thomas Fornatel will discuss all the latest news and notes in the tournament world in his Tournament Talk section. JKs Play of the Day focuses on a Gulfstream Pick 3, and Craig Milkowski's Timeform US spotlights the fairgrounds and its gaggle of stakes races on Saturday. Plus horses to watch, best bets, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our horse watch segment. Each of us has a 2-year-old for you to follow. Matt, let's begin with you.
Captain Obvious instilled regard. I thought this was an interesting trip, to say the least. This is the stretch run of the Los Alamitos Futurity last weekend, and he is in between horses, and he gets pinballed, I think, on both sides, but that's another story for another day. I guess I kind of look at this horse, guys, and say he's bred to go a 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles, as far as you want to go with him. He's handled by Jerry Hollendorfer, who obviously knows how to get a horse ready for a big race, and you see him, he's goofy with his lead still. I don't think he has any idea what he's doing. The key to this race for me, and Dan, I said it to you just a few minutes ago, this race is either going to be the key 2-year-old race going forward for 3-year-olds, or it's going to be a dumpster fire. I'm leaning toward it being more of a productive race than anything. I think Instilled Regard is an interesting one going forward.
That's a very good point, because often when you see these blanket finishes, especially on dirt, you wonder if there were truly 3 spectacular performances. But Instilled Regard, a very highly rated colt coming in, and of course the Baffert too, we know they think a lot of them. Maybe that Cash Colt Futurity is going to prove to be a key race on the road to the Kentucky Derby next year. Mike Beer, Naira analyst, you have a 2-year-old filly that should be entered back in the maiden ranks pretty soon.
Yeah, I think you'll see split time, a 2-year-old filly, a New York bred 2-year-old filly. I think you'll see her back in the entries pretty soon. This is her career debut just last week at Aqueduct. She's there on the outside chasing a horse who's been on the lead the whole way, an experienced rival too. She's not going to be able to catch this horse, but I like the way that she keeps after this horse. It looks like here that she just might get left behind here the last 1/8 of a mile. She does not get left behind. She actually starts running really well here towards the end of the race. I like the way she finishes. All of this after breaking slowly from the gate, coming wide around the turn. This is a pretty nice debut for this filly. And we'll just throw in that she's trained by Linda Rice, who she can win first time out, but Linda Rice's real MO is give them a race, they come back second time, and they really improve.
My 2-year-old is very similar to Matt's in that I think this horse is bred for more distance, but has done good work at shorter trips. It's Vino Rosso, a 2-year-old colt trained by Todd Pletcher. Let's go back to his career debut. It was a 9-horse field. He was bet down to 8-5. I really liked the way he won this race. He sat off the pace. He came with a 3-wide bid on the turn, and very professional, solid fashion at a distance I think will end up being shorter than what he really wants. He wins in nice fashion with an 80 Beyer speed figure, a $410,000 Keeneland September yearling. He is by Curlin out of a half-sister to Pletcher's Commissioner, who surely was a long-winded horse. This horse is right now down in Florida training for his second start. I'm assuming it'll be against stakes horses, and I think he'll really appreciate stretching out in distance. That's Vino Rosso, a son of Curlin, trained by Todd Pletcher. Let's get to some handicapping. Lots of graded races at Gulfstream on Saturday. There are going to be 5 Grade 3 races at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, but the DRF Bets race of the day is the Harlan's Holiday. Let's take a peek at this field. For expanded stakes previews, we cover all the horses in all of the graded stakes this weekend. Visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Paige McKenney, Matt's in here, 6-1 on the morning line, and this is just a hard-hitting horse that you can't help but root for.
No, he's cool. He's blue collar. He shows up. He runs his race more often than not. You know, he's had some injury hiccups throughout his career, particularly as he's gotten older. And in his most recent start, I mean, he tried. I don't want to hold anything against him, but I just wonder if he's lost a little bit on the fastball, and possibly at this point in his career, is he better off as a late-running sort of sprinter?
Here he is in the white blinkers, and he was sort of outpaced a bit on the turn here, and while he tries really hard in the stretch, and I think you put it perfectly, he really is trying, he's only able to finish 5th. Mary Epler and Mike Wells Welsh's DRF Plus Advance mentioned that Paige McKinney didn't seem like himself in the paddock or going out to the paddock for this race. He just didn't seem like he wanted to do it on that day, and she is hoping it's simply a one-off and that this true pro is going to be back at his best. But Mike, that never sounds like a good sign for an old horse who doesn't feel like going to the paddock.
No, that's true enough. It seems like it's not like him either, just a horse he's just such a pro. He always shows up and runs his best race. If he bounces back, though, I mean, he's clearly a contender in this race.
I think the horse to beat, and you guys are going to agree, is the number 3 Destined, who just missed by a dirty nose in the Belmont Stakes. I think it was back in 2016. Mike, he's going to be real tough.
Yeah, I guess he's just supposed to be tough in here. I mean, I can't say, and we'll get into this a little bit more, I can't say that I love Destin in this race. I just, personally don't really like anybody else all that much. I just feel like Pletcher, who just wins everything at Gulfstream, especially early on at the meet, I just think he's found a great spot for Destin. We're going to look at his most recent win this year out at Del Mar. In the marathon stakes. This is going 1 3/4 miles. This race is surrounded by a couple of grade 1 tries where he was no good, but he's not really, I don't think he's really a grade 1 handicap kind of horse. This is just a much better spot for him over a track where this trainer's horses all seem to fire.
I think the other problem here, for me anyway, with Destin, I'm kind of with you, Mike, that I don't love this horse. I think he can certainly lose on Saturday. I think he wants to go as far as possible. We saw that marathon at 1 3/4 miles. We saw him lose by a nose in the Belmont at 1.5 miles. I got to be honest, this 1/16 at Gulfstream, I'm a little bit concerned. The only thing that kind of alleviates the fear is Todd Pletcher.
I agree with your analysis, both of you. Destin is the horse to beat. My one concern is that I think he wants more distance. We saw him, of course, finish second in the 12 furlong Belmont. He looked really good winning the marathon at 14 furlongs. Even with Pletcher, I think he's a bit of an underlay at 1 mile in his 16th, although to me is a must-use in multiple race wagers. When we're filming out of the gate on Thursday afternoon, it's still undecided as to where my top pick, Fear the Cowboy, is going to run. He's entered here. He's also entered in the Tenacious Stakes at the Fairgrounds. I hope he runs here. He runs well at Gulfstream. I think he won the Skip Away earlier this year, a graded stakes race at Gulfstream Park. I think he's 3 for 5 at Gulfstream. His last race was a bit disappointing. We're going to go back to it right now. The Swatara at Penn National. You see him on the outside right now, and he's going to flatten out noticeably in the lane and kind of blow second at the end. The way I'm looking at it is I wonder if he was a little bit short off the layoff, and B, at least during the early portion of the Penn National card that evening, speed was very tough, and Fear the Cowboy tried to get into it with a 3-4 wide bid on the turn before flattening out. He is a hard-hitting horse, sort of like a poor man's Paige McKinney, where he just shows up at each and every racetrack and he usually makes bank. He's going to get a little bit of pace in this race, and I think this distance is really what he wants. Fear the Cowboy is going to be my top pick. I guess if he scratches, I'll go with my old out-of-the-gate horse watch. That's Mr. Jordan, but I'll go with the 7, Fear the Cowboy. I think he's a fair price at 4 to 1 or so at post time. Now let's take a look at Nicole Russo's pedigree pick segment. She's going to look at the New York Stallion Series, and then Peter Thomas Fornatel will get you all caught up on all the latest in the tournament world. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky for Out of the Gate. Let's take you up to Aqueduct for a look at some New York bred 2-year-old fillies, which gives us a good opportunity to look at 2 young New York sires and how they've done so far. The Saturday feature at Aqueduct is a division of the New York Stallion Series, and the standout in the field is Pure Silver, a daughter of Mission Impossible. He was New York's leading freshman sire, currently New York's leading juvenile sire, and moreover, he's also good enough against Open Company to be top 20 nationwide among juvenile sires. Pure Silver, one of the reasons why, won her first 3 career starts, including this tour de force against Open Company in the Grade 2 Adirondack at Saratoga. Now she's trying to get back on track here on Saturday. She tried to stretch out, struggled a bit, has dropped 3 straight, but here at this 6 furlong distance she should favor, and against her fellow New York breds, she really stands out as Mission Impossible looks to finish the year strong. I do want to mention another filly who's going to be a long shot in here, Velvet Trini. Now, she's still a maiden after 7 starts, ran second last out, and has faced some decent horses. She's by Trinaberg, who's actually looking for his first winner still from his first crop, and that surprises me. He was a very good 2-year-old, won first out, was grade 1 placed, won 4 stakes sprinting the following year, including this win in the Breeders' Cup Sprint to lock up an Eclipse Award. He was a big get for the New York program, and with his precocity, I really thought he'd factor as a juvenile sire, but since he turned in such a good 3-year-old season, I'm waiting to see if his runners do start to wake up, particularly in sprint company as we get to that turn of the calendar. Now, Mission Impossible and Trinaberg also both could play a role in Saturday's 6th race, a maiden special for fillies. Trinaberg represented by Trini Ninja, who has some bullet works at Aqueduct for her debut. I'd like to see how she does breaking toward the inside here. Mission Impossible has Starlight Mission, who finished second in both her starts over the summer and is coming in fresh. The stallion also has Bourbon Wish, who was well beaten in her debut, but that was on turf. These probably prefer the dirt. Well, that's all from me this week at Out of the Gate. Now let's get you over to our Peter Thomas Fornatale for some tournament talk.
Hey everybody, Peter Thomas Fornatale here, back with you on Out of the Gate to talk about tournaments. The big news in the tournament world last week was the release of a statement by the Breeders' Cup based on the controversy that happened at this year's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. As an interested observer and somebody with a stake in the contest world, I really wanted to give this statement an A. The review that was performed by Robert Watt of Stoll, Keene, and Ogden, who's the longtime counsel for the Breeders' Cup, determined that 9th place finisher Eric Moomey should be disqualified from this year's BCBC for playing collusively with Roger Ball. The two men had 2 entries each, and between them bet 4 different European runners in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, essentially turning 4 separate entries into one monster entry. This is clearly against BCBC rules, which state collusion of entries between horse players is prohibited, as is any attempt to manipulate the results of the tournament. This DQ must be seen as a good thing for the contest world in general. It's the first time I know of that a handicapping contest has enforced collusion rules, and a level playing field is obviously in the best interest of all horse players. The problem is there are still many unanswered questions that need to be addressed if players are going to continue to support the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge going forward. Before I continue, let me be clear. I've said this in a lot of places, and I'll say it again. I do not believe that the winner, Nissan Gabay, should have been disqualified. I've been saying all along what the statement notes. Mr. Gabay and Mr. McFarland played only 1 entry apiece, and the wagering patterns employed could have been employed by 1 participant with 2 entries within the rules. However, the Breeders' Cup statement also says Mr. Gabay and Mr. McFarland stated unequivocally that they do not collaborate on wagering strategy, even though they share tournament winnings. This statement beggars belief. McFarland's entry was alive to a $1 million bonus at the BCBC. It's obvious that the plan for Gabay and McFarland was to collaborate on McFarland's entry and use Gabay's as a kind of backup. Put it this way. Do you really believe that if McFarland's entry was alive for the $1 million bonus, that Gabay would have played the same way he did? If you do, I've got a lovely Gothic Revival-style bridge to sell you. I wish the Breeders' Cup statement had been more clear. They were allowed to play in partnership because they only had 2 entries total, and their relationship was well known by the Breeders' Cup. Then there's the matter of the now infamous rule change, which minimized penalties for not making your minimum wagers. These rules have come up at several tournaments in 2016, though it's notable that the most experienced contest directors, or several of them, Nate Newby at Santa Anita, Jim Goodman at Keeneland, Chris Barr at Del Mar, all kept the rules the same as they were at the Breeders' Cup in 2015. These are the rules that allowed Gabay not to make a play until late on day 2. Why were these rules changed? Well, I personally heard pleas from Kevin McFarland and his and Gabay's known associate Christian Helmers about wanting the removal of mandatory races when I started working for DRF back in 2014. BCBC founder Ken Kirkner recalled Helmers and McFarland, among others, wanting to do away with these rules as far back as 2012. Listen, despite any claims to the contrary you might hear, there's no doubt that a small group of advantage players helped to successfully lobby to change the rules in the biggest tournament going, the $1 million BCBC, and that one of them was able to use these rules to win the tournament. It's a counterintuitive rule. The whole point of the contest is to generate churn. This is one of the reasons why other players didn't understand the rule. There was also the specifics of the way the rule was written, which didn't indicate whether the penalties were coming off your bankroll or not, and in fact indicated to most players that that money would not be available to bet. It's also worth noting that reducing the impact of wagering requirements increases the efficiency through which collusion can occur and also reduces the potential audit trail. In an ideal world, the Breeders' Cup statement would have explained to players something about the how and why of the rule change instead of including only a passing reference to their desire to reevaluate the broken rule. BCL is nevertheless reviewing its official rules for future years to encourage wagering throughout the 2 days of racing while mitigating penalties for those players that unintentionally fail to meet the minimum wagering requirements. The best news to come out of the Breeders' Cup statement is the fact that the Breeders' Cup will be launching a wagering committee chaired by Craig Bernick and Mike Rogers. In addition to other BCL board members, horse players will have an important voice on the committee, with tournament players Jonathan Kinchin, Paul Matisse, Joe Applebaum, and Tom Quigley participating. Breeders' Cup CEO Craig Fravel's quote about the committee was very encouraging. While we hope the work of the wagering committee will lead to improvements for the Breeders' Cup and thoroughbred racing generally, the first priority will be to review the operation of the Breeders' Cup betting challenge as well as the rules governing play, he said. We expect to address concerns related to collusion, the audit referee function, minimum play requirements, bet types, etc. While this has been an unfortunate occurrence, we expect to make changes that will set an example for the industry and establish a foundation for growth. These changes could be very positive if indeed the Breeders' Cup gives real power to horse players to shape tournaments. But the players panel convened in the wake of the Fix 6 scandal proved that there's also precedent for a group of high-level horse players to get together to offer recommendations only to have the most important ones go unheeded while business continued as usual. Hopefully this new committee is not like that and more like the NTRA players panel that's had a great effect on shaping the NHC. And this is the first step on a long, successful journey. But until we see how the Breeders' Cup decides to actually proceed going forward, there's only one grade I can give Friday's BCL statement, and that's an incomplete. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal, and you're watching Out of the Gate.
You asked, we listened. DRF Plus has more flexible subscription options. Use DRF Plus Basic for exclusive news and analysis, including our DRF Live real-time news feed. Or go deeper with DRF Pro and unlock buyers, closer looks, picks, and reports, including the DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off the plan of your choice. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about the DRF Plus subscription plans at drf.com/plus.
Let's take a peek at the field for race number 10 at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. It's the Grade 3 Tropical Turf Stakes. $100,000 is the purse. For expanded stakes previews of all the graded stakes races this weekend, please visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike Beer, the number 7 black type, 2-1 on the morning line. You can understand why he's the favorite on the line and probably will be the favorite at post time. He's just a solid, consistent runner. What's the knock at this price?
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense on paper. I guess the knock is if you've been, following Black Type's career, and he's been over here for a couple years now for Christophe Clement, you know that he's a good horse. You also know that he's not a great horse. He's just good. When he gets good trips and things go his way, he can win some races. He won the Grade 2 Knickerbocker 2 starts ago with a perfect trip in New York. He can win this race, and I'm not sitting here saying that he's just a horse that you have to bet against in here. But if he's going to be 2-1 or in that range, I think it's worth taking a shot against him.
I agree. As I said in the stakes preview, he's solid. He runs his race every single time. I just don't see the edge where I want to play him at 2-1 or 9-5, or there's some other interesting horses in the race. And Matt, you have an interesting horse, a horse perhaps getting back to his best surface.
Western Reserve, you know, his most recent run came up at Woodbine over the Tapeta in the Autumn Stakes, and he ran into a couple of decent horses, Gigantic Breeze and Melmich. And I wonder if it's as simple as this horse didn't love being on this surface. He gets back to turf, his preferred surface. And the big thing for me, I don't know who really wants the lead in this race. We have Paco Lopez aboard. He's going to be forwardly placed at the very least. He doesn't need the lead, but he can sit just a little bit. And again, I think getting back to the turf helps him a lot.
Yeah, I agree with everything Matt said, and we're on the same horse here. I like Western Reserve as well. I also like the fact, and I agree with Matt, I like that he has speed in this race, and I think he can make the lead if Paco gets aggressive. I just like the fact that he's a price in this race, because I feel like this is sort of a wide open kind of race. He has races that fit, especially if he gets the right trip. I'm just hoping Paco sends.
12-1 on the morning line for the 6 Western Reserve, and I agree with you. I think the Western Reserve is going to be sent out of the gate, but I also think there's going to be pressure. The 8-1 Go All Go, the 9 Shakamat, both of those horses have good speed. I think personally this race is going to be set up for a mid-pack runner or a closer. I think it sets up for the 2 Camelot Kitten. When Camelot Kitten was good, and you got to go back to last year, he was pretty good for trainer Chad Brown. He beat Beach Patrol, he beat Annals of Time, 2 more highly regarded Chad Brown horses, really serious turf horses. He's come back this year and he could easily take the position. He just hasn't come back as good. I'm going to be forgiving. I think his first start off the layoff in the Lure Stakes, I just think he needed the race. He then caught a race where there was no pace and he couldn't rally into it. And then his most recent start, we're going to take a look at it right now. It's the Artie Schiller Stakes, and he's no match for Black Type, who's going to go on and win this race. This race was over a less than firm turf course. I think he's digging after making an early inside move, but I just don't think he is able to kick off and push off of this good turf course. If he can get a firm turf course, a little bit of pace on Saturday in the tropical turf, I think we're going to see the good Camelot Kitten. It'll be the first time we've seen the good Camelot Kitten in a while. He is 9-2 on the morning line. I would take Camelot Kitten at 3-1 or 7-2. Lots of other great racing action at Gulfstream on Saturday. Let's go to the My Charmer. We'll kick off the Late Pick 4 at Gulfstream Park on Saturday with race number 8, the My Charmer Stakes for fillies and mares. Let's take a peek at this field. We are traveling 1 mile. We are expecting a field of 9 running for a $100,000 purse. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com. Christophe Clement looking for a big Saturday at Gulfstream. Of course, he has Black Type in the tropical turf. Matt, he's got Stormy Victoria in here, and I think really the question about Stormy Victoria's chances on Saturday is, does she want this distance?
Well, that's the big, great unknown, because recently she's been campaigned at much shorter distances. We're going to take a look at her most recent run. This was sprinting up at Aqueduct. The problem that I have with this mare at this point in her career anyway is that ever since she got here for Clement, she has a really, really good turn of foot, but she is not trustworthy about when that thing is going to be timed perfectly, because when she wins by about a neck at best. I don't know, at a shortish number, that's the kind of horse, especially if you want to consider the fact that the distance may not be her friend. I don't want to find out at too short a price that she doesn't want the distance or the ride was timed poorly.
Mike, as we discussed in the stakes preview, we believe she has all the talent in the world comparable to the other horses in this race. She is one of the 2 most talented horses in the field, but we are terrified about the distance. We like her between 6 and 7.5.
Yeah, so far that's where her best races have been, sprinting on the grass, 6-7 furlongs. I think that's where she's most effective. I think that's where her kick's most effective. I do think she's a talented horse. I think she's a dangerous horse in this race. I'm not so sure I trust her going the 2-turn mile.
I think we would agree, though, that the horse to beat is On Leave. Mike, she's your top pick, short price.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to say about her. She's fairly obvious on paper. She's 7-5 morning line, I think. You might even see her go off shorter than that here. She just makes a lot of sense on paper in this race. Personally, I felt like after a 3-year-old campaign, she might be competitive in some of the bigger and better races in the Filly Mare Turf Division this year. That didn't happen. But in races like this, she's just super tough, and I couldn't go against her in here.
Matt, you are going to go with a little bit of a price. Gianna's Dream goes out for the great Michael Maker. She is in razor sharp form, and perhaps best of all, she's got great tactical speed in a race without much gas.
That was the big thing for me. I figured, On Leave, she's way the horse to beat, but if I'm going to take a shot against her, I want a price and I want a horse that has a little bit of tactical ability. That's Gianna's Dream. Her most recent run at Remington Park, guess what? She was 1-10. She's supposed to do what she did in this spot, but again, this is a slow pace. She could sit close to it. She's shown in the past that she can go right to the lead. I think if you go to the run 2 or 3 starts back when she ran in the Violet at Monmouth. That's really the race for me that makes me think that she can run with this type. And I think the only reason she lost that day is because it was a 1 1/8. Getting back to a shorter distance, I think she's got a puncher's chance in here. She can go to the lead, she can sit just off, and she should be a good number.
Gianna's Dream might be the value play. I'm going to agree with Mike. I think On Leave gets through here. We are going to go back to her performance in the Goldacova Stakes at Del Mar on Breeders' Cup weekend. And this is a race where you see her kind of buried down towards the inside near the back of the pack. Once she does get clear with some run, she does kick, but the horses in front of her just have too big of a head start. She is going to fire in between horses in the 2-path late, gallop out very, very well. And I think the key with On Leave is, in the past at least, she has shown the ability to be closer to the pace. I think if Irad Ortiz had an opportunity to take that Goldacova back, he would have been closer to the pace. The winner was able to sit just in the pocket, and if he could have obtained that position, maybe On Leave would have gotten to the winner's circle in the Goldacova. Not a lot of value, but I think On Leave gets through for Shug McGahee. That's my top pick in the My Charmer. JK's got a pick 3 play at Gulfstream. Craig Milkowski's time form spotlight. It's at the fairgrounds. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. Last week was a little bit tricky. We had a scratch in our daily double, but the first half was a winner. Some people might not agree with the disqualification of Solomini in the Los Al Futurity. However, McKenzie still paid the bills. On to this week, we're going to go to South Florida. Race 5 is the Rampart Stakes for fillies and mares at Gulfstream Park. In that race, I'm going to start, if we're going to play a pick 3 here, I'm going to start with a single. Curlin's Approval coming out of the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint. This horse has won 7 times out of 10 races at Gulfstream Park. The class of the field can run a triple-digit buyer, while the others will struggle to do so. Drawn down inside, South Florida, Gulfstream Park, being down the inside is definitely an advantageous place to be, and I think the Curlin's Approval will find herself there and will get the job done. So we'll just use one horse in the first leg. In the second leg, race 6, it's a mile, 2-year-old race. And the thing about that is, what's great about South Florida is our guys at the DRF Clocker Report with Mike Welsh and Donald Harris and Dave Norton. They do a great job highlighting what these horses are doing in the mornings at Palm Beach Downs, at Palm Meadows, and also at Gulfstream Park. Now, what you have to be careful about is at Payson Park, we don't have the workouts for that track. It's a private training facility. Luckily, in this race, the 2 horses that have been training at Payson Park have run already, so you know what you're kind of up against already before we even start. I'm going to look at the 1, 3, and the 10. That's without looking at the workout report. That'll be out on Friday, I would imagine, for the Saturday racing. Make sure you take a look at that and see what those guys are saying about these young 2-year-olds and how they're training going into the race. I think the 1 obviously is 30-1 at a little bit of a sneaky price. The 3 with Todd Pletcher, you can leave Todd off of your Gulfstream maiden races if you'd like. And then the 10, Locomotion for Bill Mott. Rudy Persett used to work for Bill Mott, so there's probably a little bit of a connection there. It won't be much of a trainer's switch in that regard. Going on into the 7th, I'm going to use 4 horses in this race, the 1, the 5, the 7, and the 9. It's a little bit of a spread situation here. It's 6 furlongs at Gulfstream Park. I'm looking for horses that are going to be forwardly placed. The 1, Dearest, has some early speed, can be close, and can be in a tactical striking position. I'm also going to use the 5, True Romance, who got a really weird ride last time, was rated pretty aggressively last time. And if you take a look at that tape, you'll notice that. I'm going to try to come back with her and see if we can't get her going in the right direction with a little bit of a different ride. I'm going to use the 7, Pretty Perfection, another one who has some early gas and could be involved early in the race, forwardly placed. And then the 9, Jane Sapelli, with a pretty big move in terms of the jock, moving with Nick Juarez to Irad Ortiz, who's been riding lights out in the last 10 to 14 days. I think that's a horse that could get it done. Her last race, excuse me. She was the best of the speed and a fast pace. Look for those horses to excel when they come back. Look forward to seeing you guys next week. Good luck.
This is Craig Milkowski at Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to talk about the Buddy Diliberto Memorial Stakes. It's race 6 at the fairgrounds on Saturday, and it's a 1 1/16 turf race with a $75,000 purse for older males. As usual, I'm going to start with the preview page and a few things to note there. I look at the race rating, which is a 121, which is really solid for a non-graded stakes race. So expect a good field. They're probably prepping for some of the better races coming up at the fairgrounds later in the meet. Fairgrounds draws early, so in this case we do have morning lines and Timeform US power picks, which you can see here. I've highlighted those. You can see the pace projector in the right corner, which we're going to look at here in a sec. And I've also noted 3 of the horses that I'm going to focus on in my betting, the 3 Thatcher Street, the 8 Saham, and the 9 Applicator. All 3 of these have spotlight figures which exceed the race rating, which for older males is something I like to look for. Let's take a look at the pace projector. If you notice on the preview page, it showed a little blue disco rectangle is what it's actually called, and it shows that it favors horses on or near the early lead. Now on turf, this isn't as strong a tool as it is on dirt, but it does give you a likely indication of what the pace is going to be like. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of pace in here, and you'll see that as we look at the past performances. I'm going to start out looking at a horse who I didn't highlight on the preview page, and that's number 2, Sir Dudley Diggs. He's a 3-1 morning line favorite in here, and he was also the upset winner of the 2016 Queen's Plate at Woodbine, so he's won quite a bit of money in his time. The reason I'm against him a bit in here is he's a horse, a couple reasons really. He's a horse who's been getting a lot of fast paces, which should flatter his style. And he's been running okay, but as you can see, his speed figures just aren't up to what some of these others have run. He runs in the high teens. He did hit a 120 way back 5 or 6 races ago. But another thing I noticed with him is he's been crazy how often he's drawn off turf courses, yielding and good, just litter his past performances. And the one time he ran on firm, it was by far his worst effort. And in Timeform US, you can easily scroll through the lifetime past performances for all these horses. And you can see he doesn't appear to be a horse that likes firm. So I'm assuming, I looked at the weather for New Orleans this weekend. It looks good. So I'm assuming the course is going to be firm. If it should change and they get a little rain or the course is on the slow side, then maybe he's worth a second look. The next horse I'm going to look at is Thatcher Street. This one's drawn towards the inside, and he's actually shown in second in the pace projector. And that seems to be a place where he likes to run. He can take the lead. He's a very versatile sort. He's run from the middle of the pack. He runs up close, and he's even been on the lead. What I did notice, he's went up against some really fast fractions last couple times. He faced a really quick Shining Copper, who won that race, the Grade 3 River City. But he held on well. He pressed him through those quick times. He was only beaten 2 lengths. And this is a horse I do like in this spot. Another one we're going to talk about is number 8, Saham. Quite a bit here. I think he's probably the best horse in the race. If you look at his speed figures, he's got multiple 120s in here, something most of the field in here can't say. The one negative with him is he doesn't have a lot of early speed, so he's probably not going to get the best setup today. But if he's near 6-1 on the morning line, he's definitely going to be a horse I'm going to include. The last horse we're going to talk about is Applicator. He's drawn outside, and he's a short horse that is shown in front in the pace projector. He's not a horse who actually leads very often, which is indicative of why it says that the race will favor horses on and near the early lead. There's no true speed horses in this field. It's kind of a guessing game if he will get the lead. His fractions say he will, but from the outside post, kind of tough to guess. But he has been drawing those same yielding and good tracks that seem to be going around this time of year. You get that a lot in the late fall and early winter when you're running on the turf. He was also up there against Shining Copper. I think he's a horse that's going to like going back to the firm turf. The one thing that does give me a little hesitancy is that he's only 3 for 35. He's not a horse that likes the winner's circle, so I'm going to factor that into my wagers. So what it comes down to for me is I think Thatcher Street, given the pace scenario, is going to be a good win bet if he's anywhere near that 9-2 on the morning line. And then I'm going to use him in exactas with number 8 Saham and number 9 Applicator. That's it for this week for Timeform US. Now let's go back to Dan in the studio.
Best bets time here on Out of the Gate. Mike Beer, Naira analyst, you're going to Gulfstream.
Yeah, Gulfstream Race 6 is a maiden race for 2-year-olds, 1 turn mile on the main track. The horse I'm going to bet with, I'm asking for trouble taking this horse as my best bet. He's in against a Pletcher, second-time starter, who they paid $900,000 for and ran an 81 buyer. First time out, named Navistar. I guess Navistar will probably just win. I'm going to try and beat him. I'm going to lose a couple dollars betting the number 2. He takes charge. Just on the theory that this horse, who's run twice so far, both times on turf going long at Saratoga, I think this horse was running on turf in his first 2 starts because they wanted distance for him, and they don't write distance races for 2-year-olds in New York this early in the year. So I think that's why he was on turf. Here's his debut. There's not really that much to see here, but he's off the pace in a race that gets wired. He comes through between horses here from the back of the pack, and he just sort of races on evenly at the end. He looked to me like a horse who needed this race. He came back and ran one more time at Saratoga on Travers Day, another turf route where you had to be on the inside, and he was sort of wide the entire way. I think this horse wants dirt. He's bred for dirt. He's by Tappet. His second dam is Take Charge Lady. That makes his dam a half to Will Take Charge, a really good dirt horse. I think Cassie wanted dirt routing for this horse all along. I'm going to take a shot that he improves on Saturday.
Matt Bernier, you're going to your new favorite track, Tampa Bay Downs.
The 8th at Tampa on Saturday. 2-year-olds, non-winners of one other than. They're going a mile on the turf. I like Madame Milan, and we're going to take a look. This was her most recent start when she finally broke through in the maiden score at Laurel. And you see her, she's mid-pack right now. There's not a ton of pace signed on. It's a good turf course. And this horse on the front end that's swishing the tail all about, she goes and gets her. And I thought it was a promising enough effort. She's trained by Arnaud Delacour. She's owned by Lyle Stables. You go through and you look at this race as a whole. You've had a couple of next out winners. The form has been, let's just say, decent enough anyway to think that if she takes any sort of step forward, she's going to be a handful on Saturday. The other thing to keep in the back of your mind, she's by Bernardini, but she is a half to Barbaro. She's Barbaro's little sister, so you know there's turf in there. And clearly, if she's winning on turf in spite of Bernardini, I got to think that there's something here. I wonder if she runs well Saturday. Maybe they get a little bit ambitious and try her on dirt at some point.
Out of the Gate is your weekend handicapping preview program. I'm going to close out the weekend. Remington Park, Sunday, race number 12. I'm going to go with number 5, Cosmic Burst, in the $100,000 Trapeze Stakes. Let's go back to this horse's maiden win 2 starts back at Keeneland. She went right to the front. A daughter of Violence put away the pace foes and is going to be pretty game in the stretch to turn back the runner-up. This followed her career debut where she was a rallying second at 6 furlongs. And after this race, she returned to the non-winners of one other than heat at Churchill Downs. She prompted the pace 4 wide that day, and she was able to outfinish Princess Warrior, who was grade 1 placed in the Alcibiades earlier this year, who competed in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I think this daughter of Violence really appreciates distance. The 2-turn mile, in my opinion, is not going to be a problem at all. She is trained by an excellent horseman in Donnie Von Hemel, has a bullet workout over the Remington course, and should find a field where there is a ton of pace to set things up. I'll go with Cosmic Burst in the Trapeze, race number 12 at Remington Park on Sunday. Thanks so much for watching. That's all for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.